that's a brief snippet of Paradise Lost. Hope you enjoyed it. And
Well, I thought I'd just ask a few questions before I open it up to you guys. Now, I'm sure it's hard for you to choose because it's like choosing between among children, but is there one particular Garden of Eden that you have a special place for in your heart?
oh, that is like a torturous question. I'm very fond of William Fairfield Warren, the first president of Boston University, who was probably not really a very fun guy to hang around with, but I find him just very entertaining. He's a Methodist theologian who in 1881 wrote a 400-plus page book, very long book, describing in detail how the Garden of Eden had to have been at the North Pole, obviously, right? And what I love about this is he's, he does it for these kind of really interesting reasons. Like he says that man originated from the north, and he pulls together all these myths and stories from all over the world. He's like a comparative mythology, genius. He's like, well, the Hindus say, and the Celts say, and blah, blah, blah. All comes from the north, right? So it brings everybody together, So this was like original people at the North Pole, because of course the North Pole used to be warmer, right? Which is a true fact, and that's where he, spun out from there. So there were sequoias and lots of electricity and giant animals and giant people. People were like 10 feet tall. Adam and Eve were giants. They had superpowers. And after they sinned in whatever way they did, God flooded it, of course, eventually, and then it froze, which is how we get the North Pole of today.
And did he ever mention the South Pole? Or is that doesn't play? That's theologically unimportant.
It's theologically, coming up from the south is just,
Right.
wrong geometrically somehow, And it was at a time in the 1880s when no one had actually been to the North Pole, the actual North Pole, and there was a whole lot of interest and exploration going up. So it was also played into that fascination with the unknown and the age of exploration and all that.
Right.
So I kind of liked him.
That's a good one. One of the things that I wrestled with in my book was why do people have the urge to take the Bible so literally? What drives this quest towards literalism? And what were your thoughts when you during your book?
Wow, I think the question of literalism is really interesting, and I actually want to answer with asking you a question, if that's okay.
Like it.
Because I was looking through your book, and you have this great observation that, like you said earlier, some of the smaller rules of the Bible, those sort of seemingly insignificant ones, were sometimes the most powerful. And you say at some point that you thought you'd spend the year with your head in the clouds and thinking abstract theological thoughts, and you kept finding that the Bible brought you in a way down to earth. And I really like that notion, because I think that's what a lot of these characters that I'm writing about are trying to do. They're trying to make it real for themselves, to sort of make manifest this very abstract idea of God and sin and the garden and paradise, and try to, literally to draw a map of
Right.
This is where it is, and to sort of ground it in a way.
Yeah, that's interesting. Another thing that struck me, what you said earlier, is that you just took one small verse and saw how it was interpreted. And that was one of the lessons from my year, was there is no obscure verse in the Bible. Every verse has been pored over by thousands of people. So even something like, you shall praise God on a 10-string harp. There are hundreds of people making 10-string harps to praise God. It was fascinating. Another thing that struck me was how different what it literally says in the Bible from the sort of the mythology that has come around it. Like the Bible never says that Adam ate an apple. It doesn't. It just says he ate a fruit.
That's it. And it's all been spun from there. What kind of fruit was it? Everybody that I write about in this book has their own very, strong idea of what kind of fruit it was.
What were some of the theories?
Oh, there's bananas, there's dates, there's pomegranates. There's it goes along with what kind of species of tree you think it was, which is of course also a hotly, contested issue. And William Warren, who I was just talking about, is dead set on the sequoia as the tree of life. And there's a sort of a problem with this because the sequoia don't really have fruit. So his theory is but it's, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Now, we both visited one of the same places, which was the Creation Museum in Tennessee. It's in Tennessee, right? Or
No,
Kentucky?
shame on
Kentucky.
you.
Oh my
Lied.
God. That's very unbiblical to lie. Well, you know, we don't know where the real Garden of Eden is, so we may not know where the real Creation Museum is.
It's technically in Kentucky.
All right, it's in Kentucky. My mistake. But it was, I found it to be a fascinating visit. What were your impressions?
It was a fascinating place, and I think you got to see it being built, right? Which is
That's right, it had not
dinosaurs
opened
being-
yet. Tell people what it is in case they
Yes.
don't know.
It is a museum/theme park that tries to prove that the Earth is a young Earth creationist museum. It tries to prove that the Earth is only 6,000 years old, and that because of this, much shortened historical period, the dinosaurs had to coexist with humans, and this is like a major marketing point for them, right? So they put dinosaurs everywhere, dinosaurs for kids, dinosaurs and kids. Dinosaurs are everywhere. They're at the Garden of Eden. They make it onto Noah's Ark. They get saved from the flood, and they actually don't die out until much later. They live on as dragons. Don't you know? There's a whole video explaining this. So they do these amazing. I mean, I was just in awe of the contortions that they're willing to sort of create. To make everything fit into this little shoehorned, verse of the Bible. It seems amazing to me. And my favorite part, of course, was the Garden of Eden, which was this sort of air-conditioned, climate control. It felt like you were walking into a greenhouse. There was like a black rubber, path, and everything seemed a little steamy, even though it was only plastic plants, which I don't understand how everything was fake, but. There, in the Bible, Adam gets to name the animals in the Garden of Eden. This is one of his tasks. So there's this great diorama of Adam sitting under a tree, sort of proclaiming, like so, right? Frozen. And there's a little line of animals lining up to be named. And the animal choices are very significant. It's like it's in this tropical garden, right? And the first animal there is an ape. Because of course we didn't, evolve in any way we coexisted, all along, right? The second animal is a dinosaur. So again, they were there. And the third animal, sort of inexplicably, last in line is a penguin. Which I really
Well, the North Pole was Eden,
There you go.
So maybe it all fits together.
Proof
Although I
is-
guess penguins are in the South Pole,
That's
so
right.
there you go.
Sad.
That ruins my theory. You're so close. Well, yeah, and I did learn that the crocodile in that diorama was from the original Crocodile Dundee. It was a prop.
Awesome.
One of the things that struck me there was when the museum director told me, he said, if it's true that we evolved from mud, as he said, from these little germs, how can we teach our children to have any dignity? And to me, that was a very, it's very touching because I can understand the urge. How are we supposed to have any human dignity, knowing that we're just another animal with with less hair. So to me, that really shed some light on why they're so insistent on not believing in evolution and taking the Bible so literally.
Yeah, it absolutely all hangs together. There's a reason they're trying to shoehorn all this history into a short period of time, because they really believe that if one verse of the Bible falls, or is disproven, then the whole thing. Well, it has to be, what is it, inerrant? Is that the term? It has to be complete. And if the commandment to mixed fiber commandment is not obeyed, then the thou shalt not kill is also invalid, right? Like it puts everything sort of on the same level, which is why they work so hard to make the Book of Genesis literal, even though they're really more New Testament types.
It is. It's like a house of cards. One little thing comes and the whole thing collapses. And that was one of one of the things I struggle with is how do you find meaning in the Bible if you do pick and choose?
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the conclusions I came to. You do have to be a cafeteria real person, and it has a negative connotation, cafeteria religion, but I think cafeterias are delightful. You can get great meals in cafeterias. Just don't pick the ones about stoning homosexuals and that evolution does exist. I thought, I remember reading a Mark Twain essay about how he did not like heaven. He was not looking forward to heaven because he doesn't like harp music, and there was no sex. It sounded like a very boring place. I wonder if you had any similar thoughts about Eden, or if you ran across anyone who had some thoughts like that.
Yeah, I personally think that he's probably right. Perfection by itself is kind of boring, and maybe this is a personality type thing. We were discussing this a little bit earlier. I'm the kind of person who, if there's a tree of knowledge of good and evil right there in front of me, and somebody's telling me not to go for the tree. I mean, come on, that's where you go, and you want to know everything. And so if that involves getting kicked out, like, hey, it's a fair trade, and life is probably more exciting out there anyway. And there's an Eden seeker who sort of follows that line of thinking. L.V. Calloway, who's the Florida Panhandle Eden seeker, he really felt like Eve did humanity a great service by choosing knowledge and power and progress over staying perfect and immortal in this lovely place. She moved humanity forward. He called her Mother Eve. Mother Eve made a great decision. It's a nice sort of way to look at it.
That's very interesting. I was also interested in, I love some of the research in the book because you found some incredibly obscure journals which had this information on Eden. Where did you dig this stuff up?
On the interweb. Amazing that you could find. As many of you know, I was lucky to be at Columbia University at the time, and just sort of walked into the library and was bowled over. There's an amazing library system that also pulls from all these different libraries all over the country. Tiny hometown libraries, will send you their book in a little envelope. You get to go pick it up. I loved receiving books at the library that had markings in them from the original. There's a Chinese Eden seeker who believes that Eden was in Outer Mongolia, who wrote a book in 1914 called The Creation, the Real Situation of Eden, and the Origin of the Chinese. It was a very weighty title. It was a lot of ground. It's a little tiny book. It was library bound in red. I remember this. It was like a red Chinese book. It was like, that was the way to do it. And so he had written in the back, he wasn't satisfied with the book once it was published, clearly, because there were these little fine red edits on this map of the Garden of Eden in the back of it. So he was constantly working on it. And I just love getting those little traces of, who are these people behind these maps, which is what the book kind of tries to get at. So following those little clues was a lot of fun.
Did you